Essos is east, and Westeros is west. But what's west of Westeros?
King Brandon Stark was known as the Shipwright because he had a great love for the sea, but in the crypts of Winterfell, his tomb is empty. That is because King Brandon Stark sailed west into the Sunset Sea, along with most of the Northern Fleet, and never returned. As a result, his son and heir, Brandon the Burner, set fire to the Northern Fleet, ending their naval power. Because of King Brandon the Burner's actions, the Starks have had to replan House Manderly for seaborne affairs. The disappearance of King Brandon Stark may have a connection with the Ironborn House of Harwind, who are believed to be skin changers. They are scattered throughout the Iron Islands, but their seat is located at Lonely Light, which lies far to the west, beyond the Iron Islands and deep in the Sunset Sea. In fact, Lonely Light is possibly the westernmost location in the known world. We do not know what lies beyond the Sunset Sea, but we do know that the Sunset Sea is vast and mysterious. For instance, the Seastone Chair has several suggested origins. Archmaester Herrig had a theory that the Seastone Chair was built by people who lived on the Iron Islands before the first men settled there. Maester Curve wrote in his book titled Songs the Drowned Men Sing that the throne of the Ironborn was brought to the Iron Islands by people from beyond the Sunset Sea. But most intriguing, Maester Theron believed that the Seastone Chair and the base of a high tower in Old Town were built by the Deep Ones. The Deep Ones are said to be a race of creatures that were partially men, but also mixed with creatures of the sea. Maester Theron also believes that the Deep Ones inspired tales of the Merlings, which are even more widely known throughout Westeros. In the Free City of Lorath, there are legends of creatures coming from the ocean to destroy the fabled Maze Makers. Sailors unlucky enough to be captured by the strange green-skinned peoples of 1,000 islands are sacrificed to the fish-headed gods. When the tides are low and the waters recede, idols emerge of these strange creatures. These aquatic half-human creatures, if they exist, probably started what would later become the religion of a drowned god. King Aerys Targaryen, more commonly known as the Mad King, sent Steffon Baratheon, the Lord of Storm's End, to the Lances. He was on a quest to find a bride of Valyrian blood for Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. Lord Steffon failed, but he did manage to find an incredible fool. This fool was like no other, and Steffon said that he could even teach Stannis how to laugh. Unfortunately, Lord Steffon's ship, the Windproud, was destroyed by a storm on the rocks of Shipbreaker Bay. Of all the Stormlanders aboard that ship, only the fool from the Lances, known as Patchface, survived, but he was changed. After nearly drowning in Shipbreaker Bay, Patchface remained the fool of Storm's End, but started to say strange, cryptic sentences. Again, this entire video is completely tinfoil crazy, just some thought-out thoughts. But it's possible that Patchface may have also been talking about the Deep Ones, and some of the strange things he says. Under the sea, men marry fishes. This statement by Patchface could be talking about the half-men, and half-sea creatures known as the Deep Ones. The shadows come to dance my lord, dance my lord. The shadows come to stay my lord, stay my lord. While this line does sound quite terrifying, I believe it's probably speaking about Melisandre's shadow demon. At Castle Black, Patchface spoke about the dead. In the dark, the dead are dancing. I know, oh, oh, oh. And to Jon Snow, Patchface said the following. The crow, under the sea the crows are white as snow. I know, oh, oh, oh. This is likely something to do with the coming winter. Patchface says some very strange things, and there are already plenty of theories about what they mean. My point of including him here was to give a possibility that drowning in Shipbreaker Bay led to the sea changing him. But possibly not just the sea changing him, but something in the sea. It's very possible that Patchface is possessed by some entity. Even Melisandre claimed that he was evil. Melisandre saw Patchface in the flames, with skulls surrounding him, and blood dripping from his mouth. She also saw the end of Eastwatch, and the whole thing about dead things in the water is very frightening. Patchface sings about how he will lead an army from below the seas, and about how he will kill Shireen Baratheon. As the story progresses, an eye must be kept on the Full of Dragonstone. In a feast for crows, Lord Gilbert Firewind placed his name in the Kingsmoot, with his sons supporting him. He claimed that he would lead the Ironborn west to lands beyond the Sunset Sea, where they would become immensely rich. His fellow Ironborn considered him mad. There is a theory that Euron of House Greyjoy may also be attempting to contact the drowned god, who would be a physical creature living in the sea. In fact, the drowned god and the great other may be two sides of the same coin, depending on who you ask. He would have the ability to summon various monstrous beings from the sea, like krakens. Euron would hope to use magic to control these creatures. While we haven't really seen much of Euron on the show, in the books he is insane. I am not sure if Martin would push his apocalyptic ending in the main story, but it's possible that with his rampant use of magic, Euron may accidentally unleash something truly terrible from the hellish voids of a deep ocean, with hordes of the deep ones rising from the sea to engulf the western coast in chaos, with possibly the drowned god himself descending on Old Town. It doesn't help that there is a large possibility that the drowned god is the Great Other himself. It's also very possible that Euron is a pawn of Brynden Rivers, now known as Bloodraven. Brynden Rivers was a Targaryen bastard, likely a sorcerer. He was the son of King Aegon Targaryen, the fourth of his name. He fought in the First and Second Blackfyre Rebellion. During the Blackfyre Rebellion, on the Red Grass Fields, Bloodraven killed Aegon Blackfyre with a weirwood bow. He then fired 7 arrows into Daemon Blackfyre, and then killed Aemon Blackfyre after that. After the Third Blackfyre Rebellion, the captured Aegor Rivers, known as Bittersteel, was brought to King's Landing. Bloodraven tried to have him put to death, but Aegor was sent to the wall instead. Near Eastwatch, Bittersteel's ship was intercepted, and he escaped to Essos. Bloodraven was also the hand of a king, and called the Great Council in King's Landing after King Maegor Targaryen died. Brynden Rivers allowed Aenys Blackfyre safe passage from Tyrosh, so that he could participate in the Great Council. But when Aenys Blackfyre arrived at King's Landing, Bloodraven had him arrested and beheaded. Unfortunately, Aegon V was elected by the Great Council as king, and he had Bloodraven arrested. Aegon V was also known as Aeg from the Dunk and Aeg series. When faced with the death or taking the black, Bloodraven chose the latter. In 233 AC, Maester Aemon sailed north to the Wall, and was accompanied by Aegon V's friend, Sir Duncan Vatol of the Kingsguard. Sir Duncan Vatol was escorting Bloodraven and 200 prisoners, many of which were archers from Brynden Rivers' Raven's Teeth. Bloodraven became the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, but went missing north of the Wall in 252 AC. Bloodraven has been alive for a very long time, and during that time, he has been increasing his knowledge of magic vastly. He could have foreseen something about the Deep Ones, and is using Euron Greyjoy for a grander purpose. His magic is strong, and it's possible that he could be the mastermind of something even greater, connected to the Night King and possibly the Drowned God. How many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have? 1,000 eyes in one. Brandon Stark, the shipwright, sailed into the Sunset Sea with most of the North's fleets, assuming they did not run out of fresh water and die, or were descended on by the Drowned God with his Krakens and Deep Ones. They must have landed somewhere in the west. Whatever happened to them afterwards, they did not sail back. I know this is a wild theory, but what if they established a stronghold on the western shore of the Sunset Sea? What if over the centuries that had passed since they left Westeros, they had carved out a Stark kingdom? I am willing to say that a King of Winter would have been accompanied by members of other northern houses sworn to the throne of Winterfell. Perhaps on whatever land they discovered west of Westeros. And no, I do not think they reached Asshai. There is now a realm that resembles the North, still holding on to the North's customs and traditions. This kingdom would be ruled by the descendants of King Brandon Stark, and the lands would be owned by other Northmen houses, who sailed west with King Brandon. The others are coming, bringing with them endless hordes of whites. When they breach the wall, and I do think that they will, the North may fall. Many people believe that the Night's King will be defeated by Azor Ahai in a final battle, taking place near or at the Isle of Faces. By the end of A Song of Ice and Fire, however, it's very likely that many noble houses would have fallen into extinction, with the threat of White Walkers, and depending on how the War for the Dawn goes initially, the North will probably have most of its houses extinguished. Jon Snow is very likely Targaryen, and I don't believe that Bran would have heirs, but I may be wrong. He is also the Three-Eyed Raven now, and I do not think that the line of House Stark will be continued by him. It is possible that Sansa Stark will die before the series ends, or will marry off and lose the Stark name. Rickon has fallen, and this leaves Arya Stark, who is a wild card. There is a very real threat that House Stark could die, along with many other northern houses. House Bolton has already fallen, with the death of Ramsay, the final Bolton Lord. Westeros would feel strange if the North is repopulated by houses from the other kingdoms, if its various seats are taken by sovereign houses who have at one point had a link and claim to the various northern seats. But now, picture this scenario. What if after the others are dealt with, the North lies barren and lonely? The lookout of House Farwind at Lonely Light doesn't believe his eyes. He runs down the tower's winding stairwell, arriving at Lord Farwind's quarters, excited but out of breath. When he finally speaks, Lord Farwind climbs the lookout himself, and on the horizon spots a huge fleet sailing east. When the fleet nears, the banners of House Stark and a dozen other northern houses fly proudly in the wind, and the descendants of King Brandon Stark and the lord sworn to him land in the north. And finally, after centuries in the west, the Starks of the Sunset Sea reclaim their seat at Winterfell, and their bannermen return to their ancestral castles. I am not sure when Brandon the Shipwright lived, but if it was after the Boltons kneeled to Winterfell, we might even have House Bolton restored. If a Stark fleet shows up later in the story, you heard it here first. Let me hear your thoughts on Brandon the Shipwright down below. I've been Maester Atel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Have a nice day.